Knowing that the weather would take a turn, storm chasers were in northeast Nebraska that day tracking the storm. One chaser, he went above and beyond to warn people to get to safety as that tornado approached.
First Alert meteorologist Kat Taylor joins us now in the studio and brings us this part of the story.
Matt and Ron, storm chasers provide essential information in times of severe weather. Oftentimes, they're the people on the ground who first spot the tornadoes as they form. One chaser saw the Wayne tornado on the ground and did everything he could to urge people to seek shelter.
Dude, that thing's a mile wide right now. That thing's a mile wide.
That was storm chaser Matt Phelps, and video he shot as he was chasing that afternoon. He, along with Bill Manos and Donovan Gruner, watched the tornado form, get larger, and bear down on Wayne that Friday night 10 years ago. Phelps, from the car, tried to warn onlookers, trying to get a glimpse of the tornado as it approached Wayne.
The tornado, there's a mile wide tornado coming this way. Get inside, it's a mile wide.
After warning residents, the chase team drove by portions of the city that would be destroyed moments later. I spoke to Matt Phelps leading up to today's anniversary, and he said he didn't hear sirens sounding as they drove into town, and he said he felt like he had a responsibility to alert those people.
Responsibility and a job he carried out very well. Kat, thank you.